people like Sid Kohlberg. And it just exposed me to the older cars and then running the rallies. And Ken Schaff said, have you heard of the event called the Mille Miglia in Italy? And I said, no. He says, what do you think we take a vacation and we go do the Mille Miglia? And so in 1986, we went to Italy and I ran that event in a press credentials car, which he got those credentials at the last minute. So we were literally in the event going 100 plus miles an hour all day long. There had been no big accidents, and so I can tell you it was going very quickly, or at least we were able to go quickly. And I think I saw Ivan was there as well with Bill Harlan, I think, was in his Allard. And we came back from that just infected. We said, we gotta do this. We gotta get a car and we have to go do the Mille Miglia before it's over. Because they can't do this. They can't go that fast and keep going. So time was essential, and we found the old Giulietta Sprint in Kansas. And it was a Sprint Veloce, and Ken Schaff called up the guy and said, well, two other guys had called. One's name is Stephen Griswold, the other's name is Martin Swig. And Ken said, I'm sending you a check. And the car was okay. In fact, Ken kind of had a mild heart attack and bought 3 other cars to try to build a good one. And we did. And not 1 year later, but 2 years later, we were in Italy with that car. And just had an amazing time. Let me see if I can move some of these. So this is the shop that I started at when I was working in restaurants, and this belonged to Marvin Collins, who was nice enough to take these photos back in the day. This is probably in 1981. I shouldn't say this, but painting lacquer outside. I painted my Julia Super there. And this is Marvin. That's what I looked like then. I think that's the Ramones or the Tubes. Yeah, you know. And that's a later picture of a Sprint Special I built as a project. And that's my dear friend Jan Jorth, who he and I took over the Fred's Auto Go Fast empire. Literally a pile of parts thrown in the floor, and I sorted and organized those things. And we were just 2 really happy kids, you know. He was playing rock and roll and driving Lancia Aurelia Spiders and Ducati motorcycles, and I, you know, was running around in my Spider Veloce getting lots of speeding tickets and, you know, having girlfriends and living the life. This next picture is a little out of order. This is the lightweight sprint in Rome with Ken Schaff and I making it through. And it was a real push to get that car done for the event. In fact, we had a going away party where come and have some champagne as we send the car off, and literally, how about you put that bumper on and finish the grill work, and then I'll have a suitcase and I can put the rest of the parts on when we get to Italy. So it did that, and it was a fabulous event. And you know, I got sick. We were both just pushed so hard. So it was raining at the start and foggy, but we still did the event, and it was just an amazing event to go through Italy at great speed. This is on the Fuda Pass, and going into Rome and just experiencing the roads and the countries and hearing the sounds of the big cars, the V12 Ferraris, and Don Orozco was there in his Scarab, just right through the villages at, you know, well over 100 miles an hour. You couldn't believe it. It was really special. And after that event, the factory, this is a picture of Martin Swig and Ken Schaff at the Arese Museum. And Martin pulled some strings that lasted for a year or 2, and they stored the car for us. So we got the lightweight left at the museum along with the Cortegara, which is a very special 1900 that's there and pictured in the back. The other crazy thing, and these pictures might be out of order, is running the La Carrera Panamericana. Like the Mille Miglia, the La Carrera is an event very similar, but in a way closer to us here, but run at more speed. So now you get to like really race the thing. You can really push it. And Martin came up to me and said, what do you think about doing the La Carrera? I see this car on my brain trailer. And would you be up for it? And I said, absolutely. That's great. Let's do it. introed, I'll skip around a bit, but I'd done La Carrera with Eric Zausner back in 2001. So I'd gone down with a Studebaker and a Cadillac with a Henry J. Kaiser that Ivan had run in La Carrera that Eric had bought, or people had bought and fixed up. And so I'd been exposed to it, so I really liked it. And Ivan said, earlier, you got to do this La Carrera. It's insane. It's really not for the faint of heart. It's very fast. It's really racing. And that's what I liked. Even though we were going quick on the Mille Miglia, it didn't have flat out speed sections. So La Carrera did have that. And, it's not the easiest thing to do, La Carrera. It's not for everybody. Of course, you're the one with the steering wheel, so you can always drive it sanely. But what happens when Martin and I get in the car is that we just kind of take off, and forget that, caution to the wind. So let's see, Gary, how would I push this to get 2 clicks? So this is on Lacangoha, and it's a little edited. It's a downhill section, and there's a full cliff on our right. You can see this road as you come up to it. And I'm navigating, and Martin's on the pedal. And I think he was telling me to go faster, and I was probably telling him to go slower more, but this is an amazing shot where you'll see in a few minutes here. Maybe a half hour.
Is the road closed to traffic?
Yes, so they close the road off and you leave every 30 seconds. So there's a car 30 seconds up the road from us and a car 30 seconds behind it. And you're grouped so that you're grouped on your time. So it reduces the amount of, well, you almost lost it there. It reduces the amount of time of them catching you. So you try to minimize passing people on the road. This is in the 4-door sedan. And here, look at this. And that kind of happens. But really, you're then just calling the next corner. It's like, it almost is like, whoop, okay, stay on the gas. And he never lifted. That was awesome. We were really excited by that. Yeah. And here's the taxi. I think this might be at Querétaro or Aguas Calientes, the great oval. It was really fun to drive there. And just such a good time, such a great little workhorse. And while I might have built a more low-slung car to run the event after this one, this car has such nice room inside, such good visibility, and it always brought us home. So really love that car. And I felt like we had some really good runs in it. It was such a blast. So the next thing, I ran that with Martin for 3 years, from 2009 to 2011, with some revisions along the way. And then I decided to try to make something else, like from the ground up. And so my friend had this on his wall, Andrew Watry, and I thought, that looks good, I can see that. And also, we ended up having to cut the roof off the taxi to build a better roll cage, and I thought, well, that's already done. So, the hard part's over. And then I did the sketch evolved. This is like an early version. The roof's not that low, but I kind of touch it up. So this is how I started to do it. And I built a car which is a little out of order, a pre-war Alpha, where it was built the way that they used to build cars, where you use a wire form, is how I did it, to just lay out the lines. So I'll just walk you through that. Now I've cut away most of the donor car and just using the wire form to start to shape metal over. And I can just do this really fast because it only took a year. but it was like putting the headlights where I wanted them, so I varied some things. I liked having a little license to be able to not follow exactly what was done, and add some styling things to it as well. I added these scoops to try to keep air out from under the hood so the nose will stay down, and made a wider hood. They're in aluminum, it's steel bodied, and just kind of went. I just made a lot of noise for a year. And I had this is my other SS, and so I kind of kept it to scale. I was able to, look at them and I hope keep the flavor of what the cars were. And there'll be another shot here. This is in June, driving up on the Mother Lode Rally. Had a great time, and I've got a lot of really good fun on this one. That is, and this is, Gary did a reduced compilation of that shot. Jeremy Heslop came and shot this video for Petrolicious with me, and I've run this car twice in La Carrera. I didn't have time to put the grill in it for the first year, and then in 2015 when I ran it last, it got its grill. And I'm just saying a bunch of nonsense here. But this is in Mexico. It's such a lovely country to drive through. You go through these historic towns. It made me want to read about Mexican history. This is Zacatecas, which is a La Bufa. And those are the roads outside of Oaxaca. They're just lots of big sweepers like that, where you're just kind of fourth gear and feathering it and keeping it on the road. So great. So this is back to the Mille Miglia. Oh, and now we're back in Veracruz. Just another project, this one. Really fun. I'd say the thing about Mexico and Italy that's most impressive to me is the public that comes out to the events. I mean, so many people come up to the Zócalos and you're just fed with this energy along the track. Both races in the Mille Miglia were really rich that way. The Latin temperament is quite different than what we have in this country. Here they're usually telling us to slow down and shut up, and they're saying that was amazing. And it's always raining. And it's just, the terrain in Mexico just catches you out. There had been like a storm, and this was all water around here, and I'm always taken with the way the land will just, you think you're in one place and then you just go around a bend and it's somewhere else. It's always now, October, often ends on the Day of the Dead around Halloween. And this was my first co-pilot and friend, Nelson. And it's, there's the girls, of course. This was, I think, Memo Rojas, an Indy driver who I think day 2 rolled it. But they just stayed at it. They didn't give up. They kept working on it, and you kind of get to stay in there. So they continued to make repairs. This is, I think, at the finish line. If you're lucky enough to win, you get to take your motor apart. So, and this is a friend that Martin Lauber and I met. This is Hilaire Dameron, who's now won the event 5 or 6 times, I think, and he runs this Studebaker Buick, the next motorcycle racer. And that's Martin just before La Bufa. And these are a little out of order. This is the car before I put any livery on it. The paint is still wet, and my buddy Ed Adams is towing it off to Mexico. So that was getting the car finished. And for me, that's always, there's several deadlines on this event, or many events, but getting the car done is a big one. Then getting it to Mexico is another one. Getting it across the border is another. Getting through scrutineering is another. Qualifying, and then starting, you can finally relax. But there's so many potential things where you might not make it to the next spot. And this is my wife, Christine, who's not here with us today. She's down at a concert, but she's been a real MVP in my life and drove the Range Rover you can see behind the car. I would typically, and I think we did this with the taxi as well, is we'd unhook the car as soon as we crossed the border in Mexico and then get some seat time in it, the 1,500 miles or whatever it is down, so that we'd kind of be familiar with the car. So I'd always get the thing on its wheels and just follow along and we'd start driving. And that's just a workshop photo. This is a little bit out of order, but this is the other car that I did. I wanted to learn after coming back from the Mille Miglia. Ken Schaff and I said, well, what's the next car we want to do for the Mille Miglia? And I was struck by the pre-war Alphas. And so we found another project. And on this one, it was just piles of parts. And this will sort of just show the process that I used, that is making the wire forms and just forming panels over it without a buck or without, an armature. So just sort of by hand. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I was mostly just going at it, and I figure I'll make a lot of mistakes and I'll learn something. And it was really, I love the process of building cars, like the Mexico car, just figuring out how they went together, like studying the picture. So the front wings could be removed, and you have to figure a way to do that and put it on. And again, I want to harken back to being in this area where you have people like Steve Moll and Jimmy Kilroy and Ron Barker. I think there were other panel beaters who were nice enough to say, it's not that hard, you just do it like this. And then, fail and struggle and just keep going. And this was a really fun project to do, along with Ken Schaff, who was a little bit under the weather. He had some cancer at the time, so that accelerated me to wanting to really, produce something and kind of, buoy his spirits up. And it's just kind of fun to see how the car takes shape. And as I say, it's just one piece at a time. I tried making the panels in bigger pieces like I see others do, but my method was the metal can stay thicker if I make it stretch less. So I was kind of learning a lot of that stuff here. And it's fun to just see the components. You lift them on and off, and then at the end you crimp them onto the body. And this is in the time frame. This was at Eric Zausner's, but there's a car that Jimmy Kilroy did. So if I think I'm good, I'm not. This car is polished and beautiful. And that's Ed Adams' car built on the TR250 Triumph. I just love that car. I think it has amazing proportions. And at the same party, just someone to bring up, because we lost him last year, Lou Barrero Jr., who was a good friend of Martin Swiggs. And it was a delight to meet him on the California Millie and at many lunches and pig roasts that Eric Zausner would throw. And in case you don't know, Lou Barrero ended up with his father's Ferrari after his father perished in a fiery crash in Hawaii. And he buried the car in the ground and ended up bringing it back out and selling it in the time that we knew him. So it was nice to see him kind of complete something. And there's, lots of inside and outside, and this is about it for that car, and then it ends up finished. I did also like to put a shout out to 24 Hours of Lemons. That was a lot of fun also. Like La Carrera, this is a race where you can really run hard. You still get penalties for bumping, but it's a little different than CSRG in that you're in a safer car with more crash protection. And I really enjoyed driving that. In fact, while we were running Mexico, we were driving in the Lemons as well. I think Martin had a team, and on and off my team, I don't know. But yeah, this is another, just shows kind of what you can do when you just start bending metal and sticking it together. And super fun. We've already crashed it a whole bunch since then, so. And that's a picture of that. The final year I went down with the what do we call this? The Sprint Special. It ran great, but the tow car broke down. So we were in Mexico having to shuttle all our stuff onto other people, which was nice because we'd been there a few years, so people were kind to us and carried our tires and things that we couldn't. We got a rental and eventually got the car back and that, but that was sort of the last trip. I do use this car. This is at a protest down in the bottom, and where the Zapatistas were protesting. We just parked on the freeway for a while and wonder if you'll ever get through, but we did. And then I run the car, some dirt sections with friends that I run. And I have to say, there are young people that are still doing the car stuff, and they're doing rallies like this, the Fault Line, the Mother Lode, the Cal Melee, and a number of rallies. There's no shortage of them, and good, fun people to get out and have a good time with cars and try not to hurt each other. One thing you need to do is make friends with the organizers to do well here. So this is an organizer, and this is my other co-pilot, and it was really great. We were lucky. And there's Marnik Stalinas. I should mention, he's polluted my life with the car addiction. And what I'm doing lately is I've sort of gotten in because of the style of repairing aluminum cars, and that method that I have lends well to perhaps restoring these particular cars. These are TCs. This car belonged to Nadine Brendel, who raced the car in California and won a championship, woman driver. Next, Phyllis Gaylord ran it, and then Jerry Rosenstock. And David Eichenbaum bought the car, and we did a restoration for Pebble Beach. And just had to take the whole car apart. It had some pretty big accidents, and at one point it had a fiberglass tail put on it with chicken wire, so she could make the next race by Ward and Dean down in Southern California. So it's really fun to do this car and get it back into this condition. And it showed down at Pebble, and working with a nice owner, David Eichenbaum, who owns the car. It's been a real pleasure to work for people where you share a vision. And I'll just getting close to the end here, but here's the next TC I did, or one that I did, was this car that this man bought. It was a Le Mans school car. Apparently came to Le Mans, and they used one car to teach classes there until I guess it flipped and crashed. And then this guy bought it in '67, and this picture is with he and his wife driving it in rallies in France. It was his only car. They got married in the car, and he owned it until he passed away in 2018. So on this car, I really didn't want to erase that man and what he'd done with the car. And so this might speak to where people feel preservation or fully restored, but I thought this car had a lot of flavor. That's rubber on the sides. I kind of like that. And the owner would come up. I did it for Mark Hadawi, and he was into this kind of thing. He liked this car for that. But I would put it back, so I sort of remake things how they were, and it was a really rewarding process to go through. You can just kind of see us cleaning it up. I could see the grill and the lights were wrong, so at the very minimum, the hood was also orange and the back of the car was red. So just sort of pulling it back and centering it up and saving as much of the old metal as we can. Here I've pulled down the rockers and welding the tubes that were, had given up. The guy had sand and pine needles. He drove it down dirt roads and cow manure. You could smell it when you burn it. It was great. And found a painter that says, I've never done a job like that. I said, just blend it, just do the very least you can. And he did, and I think we brought this car back. It's just a workshop photo. And it came out, I think, really nice. I was happy. This was Alan de Cadenay's, now Aidan de Cadenay's car, was more of just an engine job, but I thought, well, I have two TZs, I'll take a picture of it. But that's the French car with the yellow lights there. And then this is how the car came out at the end. And the last project I'll share with you is one that has sort of a local history. And Marnix and maybe Ivan were at Candlestick Park when this happened to this car. And they kind of lost it. It was a dark day. Not everyone survived the races that day. This driver did. But this car came to Berkeley in the 80s, and Dennis Echeverry started repairing the front end after it sat outside Charlie Rosaghi's shop for a long time. And so I'm fortunate enough to pick the car up in this condition, and this nose looks, wrong to me. It's too blunt, flat, and just a little, I'll just cut it to pieces and try to sort it out a little bit. But it's really, I get a lot out of sort of, completing projects if I can. This is taken in San Diego before I started, but this is sort of the method I use. I've made a buck from Marnix's car, so for the grill and to get the opening shape right, and just getting that through there. And then here's a great picture of my friends Ron Hine and Joe Heffernan, Mike Heffernan, sorry. And get Ivan in there and Dave McCarthy as well. So that's about what I got. That's it. That's all. You want to add anything, Martin? No. Any questions? Go ahead.
So are you working on anything other than TZs now?
Yes. Julia Supers, Fiat Multipla, Sprint 54, Sprint, Spider. Yeah, I bite off more. I just roll the balls in the air and try to catch them.
When you're doing these, is there anything available from the factory, or the plants just non-existent?
It's a golden time. I just want to always say that. It's the best time to be alive. That we have so many resources. I mean, it's sad that we're losing skilled people for sure, but the internet, you can find a lot more things, or not. I mean, these cars, there's the coach work part and parts you just build, but there is a great connection for alphas, Alphaholics, Classic Alpha, John Norman, still in Berkeley. It's so great to be able to get parts, so it's pretty good, I would say. But, compared to maybe other marks, it might be different. But I feel like it's, I'll spend hours on rabbit holes finding the right light bezel for the TC dash or anything, but it's out there.
Are you using TIG welding for most of your work?
No, I do have a TIG, but gas welding is the way to do, for me, panels, because it's softer, it's more malleable. The TIG is a little brittle, so if you're not going to bend it, so I'll use a TIG at the end where it might go over steel, where the flux will make it corrode, because you use this salty flux to help, do the gas welding.
What was the scariest episode you had when you were driving?
Well, there was one time where I think Martin and I were doing great, and we were bombing, and I didn't hear anything, and I saw a photographer jump over the fence, and our intercom had pulled out, so I just went bombing into a corner, and I kind of caught my heart, just made the corner. But when you see the photographers leaping out of the way, you might have overcooked it a bit. But the other time it's raining, it's wet. A big moment in Mexico was with we were with the Carrera in the Sprint Special, and Taz Harvey, who was running Dachshunds. He ran a 510 very competitive. Also, he ran a 260Z, and we were in a cornfield, and his car ran out of gas. And I had a tow rope, or he had a tow rope, so he hooked it onto me. And I mean, we were already late. So we went like 100 miles an hour, because I couldn't go slow. I had to maintain the speed, and even passing people on the road, because I didn't have that kind of horsepower. So I literally just went for it. And I don't know, I was pretty scared. And Taz Harvey, though, was like completely wiped out. When he got in the gas station, he was thanking me and cussing at me so much. But he went on and didn't get disqualified, because I could call that a safety move to get him out of the way. But you're not allowed to help. But that was pretty terrifying. Then the other one was I came across, there was like a bad run on the next section. It had started to rain, and someone put down a lot of oil in a 911 in one of the corners. And I went into it, sort of discombobulated. The whole thing is like kind of a freak show. You're constantly just putting your seat off, your helmet's on, off, belts on, you're barely making the thing. And we were a little rattled, and I went into one corner just like nothing. Like the steering's not doing a dang thing. And I just hold it, you just like freeze. And I'm thinking, oh no, I used a lot of Bondo on this thing. It's gonna crash and everyone's gonna see all this Bondo's gonna go flying. Maybe. Bondo's still in the car. And there are things, I mean, it's so funny, it's such a competitive thing. Like with the cows, it was perfect. I mean, I think our heart might have gone up for a moment there, but then we're right back into the next corner. So you just quickly reset, when you make it, and you keep going and keeping it on the road. And, of course, Mexico's a little, unstable. So staying with the group is really important. It's nice that way, that there's sort of a circus that is moving. And if you break down, it's best to just sort of keep moving with that. Don't be the weak one that gets left behind. And just something about, I think about it a lot when you ask, will I go again? And I'm so heartbroken by, if you read the news or hear about things happening in Mexico. And I worry about this country too, but I really would love to go back. I probably would, stay with the group. There's so many nice people to compensate for the terrible things that happen. You certainly have to have your mind about you, in those situations. If there's a town where there aren't police cars, read the news. Don't go in naive. Know where you are, and listen. Make friends with the other competitors who will be sharing information. So it's been a really rewarding experience doing Mexico. Yes. Yeah, the question was, I said in the video, and I'm like, God, I didn't really mean that. But I said, you have to build a car to take a speed bump at 80 miles an hour. And that was for Martin and I. We were driving along, and we were like changing out drivers, and I'm like, man, we just creamed a speed bump. And we kind of like, what? You didn't tell me, I don't know. And hit another one like right away. So it's like, but we fix them up. But so what I do there is I lift the engine in the car, and then I build a sort of pretty robust oil pan. But it's not like you're gonna go take speed bumps like that. And then I did skid plates after the taxi. We were coming down really hard at one spot, and then the exhaust just kind of kept going down or got bottomed out. And you learn, because I was welding on that thing for a night in Pueblo or something. So building the second car, I was kind of made the exhaust, actually, it couldn't get out. It comes out the side of the car, so it's sort of more protected. And then I did add skid plates, which I absolutely use because if you don't have them, you have to slow down. So if you can just bomb it, I will. And yeah, it smells. It's like the sparks. I don't know how that just comes in the car, and it just smells just like flint. Yeah, so the skid plates are totally used on that car. Yes. Yes.
Wonderful photo here where we're smiling
I love that you asked that because it's so, like racing, it's so humbling. You are not hot stuff. You are just, that's how good you are. Martin, consistently quicker, but I'm not going to give up, but it's like very quick. And Pebble, very similar. There's reasons not to judge. I don't like just being a critic, but people said, hey, you do restorations. You understand what goes into cars, and I really like the nuance of finding those right parts and how hard you find it. So yes, I'm in total awe. That's a great thing about Pebble. I've had an up and down with Pebble. I think the first car I restored with Ken Schaff, we showed a Sprint Zagato, and then we showed his 1900 and an Nardi A. So a number of cars I've showed there, and I put my heart into these things, and I know I've not done enough, and you can, so it's kind of like going in and being prepared to lose. It's the way I wish people could look at it. I think there are a lot of people that spend, millions of dollars on a restoration and want to win. But having been through the process of being a restorer, I can totally appreciate the forensics that many people put into their cars. And now there's great to see more towards preservation. In fact, the car that won this year is very significant. It's good that it's controversial. There's not a right or wrong, but it's carrying its history. I think that a lot goes into restoring that car to make it run and do it, but still not erasing the good stuff. If a car is all, and there are some shiny cars out there, but they're just, you erase that history. So I think a race car is better left and show its event. There's no deduction at Pebble for chips or use. That's, no longer the thing. But there are absolutely shops out of the UK, CKL Classics, there's many shops that really, I shouldn't even be doing it. They're so good, it's humbling, but in a good way. It also kicks me up a bit. You can have that opinion, So there was my best favorite Pebble Beach car, and I hope there's a future favorite, but I got to work on the Jebeki Jaguar that Norman Dewis drove, and he set a speed record of 174 miles an hour in an XK120. And that just shouldn't be. But it was so great to study about the car. There's pictures of it doing it. They taped the engine shut, they checked the fuel, and it was 2 ways. And I got to, and this is kind of leading up to your question, what makes a car win Best in Show? And Norman Dewis was there with the car, and the restoration was okay, and it had a fancy seat. But to have the man that drove that, and I asked him how many people said, it's not possible, that car should have gone about 154. And they had the C-Type at the time. And I said, Norman, how, so great. I was like, this is so great. This guy's a legend. He was the Jaguar development driver, chief engineer. He had his hand in the D-Types, the C-Types, all the good race cars. And he turned to me and says, I have no fucking idea. It was the scariest thing. They said, if it gets to that and you can see the picture, the car is lifting. And I just kept my foot down on it, and he went like hell. And it's like, that car won. It didn't win necessarily because the car, but of its history and the driver together. And I don't know that that's how Pebble is always going to make the calls, but that's what you get to do. Well, and so with race cars coming to the fore, now I'm mostly a race car guy. And I get that there's beautiful Bentleys and, Talbot Lagos, and we can take this outside also. But, but it's like, so cars like that Bugatti that had run at Monaco, King Leopold owned it, it had such heritage, and the guy was driving it. So it was, for me, it was a real feel-good thing, and also to not erase history. So I think it made a couple statements that I'd stand behind. The other car that was also runner-up was the Stratos Wedge. And I didn't think that was right, but when I saw the car at Pebble Beach, every time that car started or moved, it spoke to the crowd. So to answer your question, it was also just that moment in time, it looked right. And lots of varied judges, like to judge the best in show is a bunch of, Gordon Murray types, and, you got some Ivan Zarimbas in there, pulling that card. I don't know what he voted for. I don't know if he could tell. Ivan.
So do I gather that in your view, the unrestored car was best in show was an appropriate choice?
Well, it doesn't matter if I argued with it. That happened,
I
but
would take the other position.
okay. So I gotta fight two guys outside. I think I'm gonna run.
I think that that Type X Bugatti, first of all, was not in its pre-war race car coachwork. It was in the 50s rebody model. But I saw that car being restored in England, being patented, restored, made to look like it was found in a barn, but made to run okay. And here it is, it comes out, here's a show that celebrates restoration, restore, all the effort that goes in, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna restore the patent. You're gonna restore them. Is that the right thing?
I stand corrected. I do. I mean, I think, if you, and you have to kind of do it honestly. I didn't know about it's hard to not false patentate the car as you bring it back and make it run. But if you do it too much, it's a line, that's where you would look at it. There wasn't a car in my class, but that kind of thing speaks to me, how it was presented to me personally. The elegance is in its history and showing its history. It's, I've seen D-types that were the car that won, but it's so damn new. You restored the life out of it. It's absolutely dead. It's not an organic thing. Those cars were built by hand and understanding the process, how they were built, where they should have dimples and wrinkles. But when you see them too nice, that's worse. But I agree with Ivan. I mean, if I'd been privy to that, and it wasn't in the group that I did, but others were. And so, over restoration is a thing that's kind of always up. And in the race car category, I'm okay with it having the later bodywork because it showed the evolution. Look, here's the car, the early Bugatti, later had more bodywork on it. And, the paint was blotchy. So they fooled me, I guess. Do you think a preservation car can win best in show if it's honestly done, Ivan?
I don't think it's appropriate for Pebble Beach for that. I think if you wanted to give an award for the best preserved car, as a separate category, I'm all for it. I love to see them preserved. I love to see them presented that way. The Launches Stratos HF that you looked at was my vote for best in show.
Very good.
And the question of whether a post-war car is going to win best in show anytime soon, I think that car could have been a great candidate.
Yeah, it just, sometimes, what's nice about being at Pebble is you just see the car amongst the others. And the presence that little Lancia had with the front would open up, and it just looked, and it's just a little 4-cylinder version. It's not even the later Stratos, but it was just so provocative. Chris Hartley's GTO, there was another car, I'll just talk if you want. That was a great car, and I know will correct me if I get this wrong. Don't let that get in the way of my story. But that car was donated. A guy owned it and kind of was beating around, used car, gave it to the school, and the car got taken apart and reassembled 30 times. Kept the original and went back. It was a runner, but not, it's that day. So, Pebble is a little bit, and what's great is Ivan will give, nothing set in stone, and I think people will listen to Ivan and myself, really weigh in. So it's still a committee. You have some power. There's before judges meeting. So, these are things that I know Ivan's going to bring up. And it's good. There should be a discourse. There should be conversation about what it is. And I think both points are kind of valid. John Shirley did win in that Ingrid Bergman 375. That was a lovely car and pretty beautiful. It came on the California Millie a couple times too. Did I even answer your question? Martin? Yes, okay, good.
Can you talk about any disappointing work?
Oh, that's true. Well, you do get to cars that are, in general, like every year is quite different. And sometimes they're all so good, you're almost looking at 100-point cars. Many of the restorations are multi-million-dollar restorations. And it's, I feel, humbled to even be looking at them. I'm looking at, Jags, Maserati, Ferrari, Aston Martin, cars, Mercedes, Porsche. So I research really as hard as I can and dig up information, but you do see just incredible work. Occasionally, you'll have cars that are like, okay, we don't need to look at this anymore. It's just that there's so many things. So I don't mean to be disrespectful. We'll give the people, totally thank them for coming and, give them the right amount of time that I think is valid. There was 2 cars, since we're talking about Pebble and no one's leaving yet, that were really interesting. Lawrence Stroll from Aston Martin brought back 2 cars that had a very not great history when John Wyer took over the Aston Martin racing team, and they brought 2 V12 Lagondas, and they restored them both. But it was fun to read the history about it, and those cars, they were, Aston Martins typically ran this great 6-cylinder engine. That's what they could run, that's what fit in the chassis, and this other thing was nothing but a pain in the ass. And John Wyer said, the sooner we bury that thing, the better. Like, just get that out of here. And so it's kind of nice to see them now. They had oiling troubles, then the V12s weren't able to last. But now they will be, and they've sorted out that oiling problem. How much of the original car? I don't know. But now 2 cars that didn't, that were lost in a way, now they've brought back, sort of with the Lawrence Stroll putting, enough money into the company and trying to bring it up. So, it's interesting to see cars, and they're going to do those for Goodwood. And the restorer, they weren't quite ready for the show, and they weren't quite done to show level, and the provenance wasn't quite there. But I think it's really great that they're there now. And I mean, I don't mean to say they were terrible. Nothing's terrible at Pebble. Everything should come, and it's weird that we have to choose, but there's again, much money went into these cars, and they'll be running at Goodwood with those, making good horsepower. So that'll be exciting to see, V12 Lagondas spinning past their 5,500, limit, because it had a harmonics and oil pressure issue. So we see at Goodwood, it's another one of these races where they're going a lot faster than they ever did. And that's kind of history in the making. It's a new thing. It's not necessarily historic, but it's, I think, darned entertaining. So, anything else? I've exhausted you. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Conrad. We enjoyed that very much. I have one announcement to make to the group as a whole. I need to have someone think about taking over this group. I have some medical issues that are going to preclude me from doing this for far into the future. I have speakers arranged through probably June of next year, so that you don't have to do that. It's just the administrative stuff of running the group. So there's lots of ways you can do it. You can do it as a group of people doing it, or a single person doing it, or a businessman that has a secretary that has some extra time, or any combination. But please, as a group, think about it. I'd hate to see this die. So, fair warning. On that note.
I fly next Tuesday, so it starts Wednesday morning.
Got money on you.
Yeah. Put it in the stock market. You think you're playing again?
He mentioned one of them earlier, and I've been doing it about 5 times now. And it was 2 times ago. Conrad went. I had to get my alpha broke down to the inside of the set. I got the liberty to start playing slide pin. And I guess there's 2 guys there, but it's probably that my distributor didn't appreciate the unit was firing. People were up wonderfully up for about an hour, and suddenly 3 people are like, hey, Conrad's here, he's your man. And it ties into the thing. I take a look at it, like, go up and like, and show a smile on my face. I'm like, 4 times. My car was a mess. I had just driven it so hard for 4 years, and I saw like every bolt of electrical connection take loose. And that's what happened every time. I go up to like, I apologize again, I'm stuck. He'd be like, no problem, I'm right there. And in 60 seconds, he's figured it out. He's awesome.
Our personality
Yes.
is great for our planning.
Yeah.
With health, consideration, kindness, and knowledge. It's a great combination.
It's a rare
Well, thanks for chatting with us.
seeing another one.
Yeah, I will. And I'm sure you will. And good luck with whatever endeavors you pursue with the cars and otherwise. Yeah, that's really nice. Oh, you have to take a box
I do, and I got your